What is happening, Magnus? Let's find out what I missed from What If season finale. Now, I already know a bunch of y'all already told me Black Widow didn't get sent to our universe. It was the episode 3 universe. Makes me sad. Let's get it.
How's it going, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. And last night we got our final episode for season 1 of Marvel's What If. It was definitely one of the better episodes of this series, and it was really great to see the Avengers go up against the Ultron that I wish we actually got in the MCU in Age of Ultron. Now, I know some people were kind of bummed about that post-credit scene, even though it is pretty sentimental and it does set up season 2. I know a lot of people were hoping that it would connect to the MCU live action somehow. And I was definitely one of those people, but in this video I'll explain how I still think that it does connect directly to the MCU and how we'll see some of this bleed
I was
into
always thinking it
Multiverse
was.
of Madness. I'll also talk about how I actually believe the Illuminati for the main MCU were introduced in this episode, or at least how they are going to come about in the MCU was introduced in this episode. And of course I'll talk about that deleted episode, because What If was supposed to be 10 episodes long, but they removed one, and why it was probably confusing for some people. And I know that some people just have a lot of questions about what's happening in this episode, so don't worry, we'll do a complete breakdown and then talk about some theories in which I think we're going to see in Multiverse of Madness. Before we get started, be sure to let me know what you rate this episode 1 out of 10 in the comments down below. And if you love Marvel content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos. So the last episode left off with the Watcher asking Strange Supreme for help in defeating Ultron to save the multiverse. Obviously, Strange has agreed, and now the Watcher is recruiting other members, and we start with Captain Carter. The scene with Captain Carter is basically the first scene from Captain America the Winter Soldier. It's almost word for word, except obviously it's not Steve Rogers as Captain America, it is Peggy Carter as Captain Carter. She goes on to fight Bartrock just as Steve Rogers would in the Winter Soldier until the Watcher comes. He says she's been chosen and she is recruited for the Guardians of the Multiverse. We then cut to Ego taking over the body of Peter Quill so he can end up taking over the complete universe. We see the same exact Dairy Queen that we saw in the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where Ego and Peter Quill's mom were. Ego's seed has begun growing, and we can actually see Ravengers trying to fight the seed. Eventually, T'Challa's Star-Lord shows up and ends up saving Peter Quill, and it looks like he might have destroyed temporarily Ego. Remember that this is just a body that he creates. The actual living Ego is the living planet. So this most likely, in this universe at least, only temporarily delayed him just by a bit. This scene is kind of cool because T'Challa Star-Lord saves Peter Quill, who in our universe is Star-Lord himself. T'Challa says that him and the others will take care of it, and Peter says that, I got it, I'll hang back with the giant baby man cape dude. It's good to know that even in this universe, Peter's humor is still the same, but T'Challa turns around and sees the Watcher, in which he tells him he's been chosen. Now the next scene is where people might have got a little bit confused. We see Tony Stark in a Sakaar Hulkbuster type Iron Man armor. Also with him is Gamora with Thanos' sword. As you probably noticed, all of the other Guardians of the Multiverse were pulled from episodes that we have already seen. So this scene right here may be a bit of an outlier to some people, but there were actually originally supposed to be 10 episodes of What If, but for whatever reason, they removed one, and they only had 9, and obviously the one that they removed was this one with Tony Stark and Gamora. Now, we don't really know what this episode could have entailed, but there have been some leaks out there that give us a bit of an idea that kind of seem to line up with what we see here. What the leaks said that this episode would entail was, in the Battle of New York, when Tony Stark took the nuke through the portal, instead of hitting a ship, he actually directly hit Thanos' ship. Then he missed the portal back to Earth, and he ended up in Sakaar, the same place that Thor ended up in Thor Ragnarok, where he became a gladiator. The nuke hitting Thanos' ship apparently weakened Thanos enough for Gamora to come in and actually kill him. Tony would end up being a gladiator on Sakaar, much like Thor was, and Gamora would end up going to Sakaar to try and kill Tony Stark. This was to make sure no Infinity Stones ever got used, but of course, obviously she realized that Tony Stark wasn't actually a bad guy. The two of them then got together, destroyed the Infinity Stones, and then went to Eitri, the dwarf, who we saw in Avengers Infinity War, who made Thanos the Infinity Gauntlet, and they are actually destroying the Infinity Gauntlet in this scene. That's what the leaks told us we missed in that episode. Not sure how true that is, but it seems like that is was probably what happened. The Watcher shows up and, of course, recruits Thanos Killer Gamora. And with her, she brings the device known as the Infinity Crusher, which can crush and destroy Infinity Stones. Now, another interesting fact about this scene that we saw with Tony Stark, he is still talking about putting a suit of armor around the world.
Yeah.
It's ironic because in Avengers Age of Ultron, this is ironically what caused Ultron to be created. Right. Tony Stark following this plan. Now, after we see Tony Stark with Gamora, we go to Killmonger, in which the Watcher shows up and he calls him Eric Stevens, Tony Stark's former protege and killer. And side note, luckily we didn't have to watch Tony Stark die again in this episode. Killmonger gets chosen, and it's a good thing that he does because Pepper Potts, Shuri, and the Dora Milaje were coming for him, and they break down the door right after he's chosen. Kind of giving us a little bit of a feel of what would have happened in that universe. Eventually, it looks like they probably would have taken down Killmonger. Then we cut to Thor in Vegas, which he apparently really loves now on Earth. He is fighting Ultron bots, which is very curious because these bots exist in his universe, which were completely different than the universe that Ultron took over originally. Now Thor's pissed off because he was going to go on a date with Jane, give her flowers like he did at the end of his last episode for Party Thor, and he said that he was even going to wash his hair, which means that he was really going to try on this date. The Watcher tries to talk to him, but he was so pissed off at the bots that he just keeps on killing them until the Watcher eventually grabs him and freaks him the heck out. He screams hysterically, and it made me laugh hysterically in a way that I haven't laughed in a long time watching a Disney Plus show. A very important part here, Thor is holding the head of one of the Ultron bots. And as the Watcher brings Thor to this kind of void in space-time, Thor brings the head with him. We find out that Doctor Strange kind of created this little pub. It was created from the memories of Peggy Carter, which is why we see a picture of Steve Rogers on the wall. There's a little note to Thor Ragnarok here, where Thor asks for a beer, and Stephen Strange gives it to him, just like he gave him the beer in Thor Ragnarok, where the beer never runs out. The Watcher shows up and tells them that they have been chosen for a very particular reason for their skills. He says that not just a universe is at stake, but a multiverse is at stake, and he dubs them the Guardians of the Multiverse. The Watcher then explains that Ultron is now a cosmic being, having omniscience, having a synthetic body, being powered by the Infinity Stones, in which Doctor Strange then explains the Infinity Stones just like Wong did in the beginning of Avengers Infinity War. The team then goes over the plan. Separate the stones from Ultron, then destroy them with the Infinity Crusher that Gamora brought with him. Also, this whole entire time, Killmonger is messing with one of the heads of the Ultron bots. This he obviously uses at the end, which we'll talk about in a bit. And the plan begins, and we go to a planet that doesn't have enough intelligent life to attract Ultron. Then we have a few touching scenes here. Peggy Carter talks to Strange Supreme, asking him about the Peggy Carter, or Captain Carter in his universe, in which he explains that in his universe he has a Captain America, or had, because his universe is gone. But in his universe, Steve Rogers took the serum, not Peggy Carter. And this brings Peggy some joy. Then the whole team toasts together to what could be their death, but also toasts to the Guardians of the Multiverse, in which Thor then exclaims the multiverse and shoots blasts of lightning into the sky, in which that definitely attracts Ultron. Yep. Who then completely ignores the plan that they took together and attacks Ultron immediately, which it does absolutely nothing. And Ultron is pretty much embarrassed for Thor at this point. Him being a cosmic entity is almost just annoyed with Thor that he would even try. Even though Thor yelled his battle cry, "Viva Las Vegas!" Now, before the battle commenced, Doctor Strange protected all of the Guardians of the Multiverse with a spell. The true plan and battle begins, and they begin to fight Ultron. The fight is pretty epic. We see things like Strange multiplying Mjolnir, Strange bringing in the what-if zombies, Strange using some of the demons that he possessed to fight Ultron, and eventually they do take the Soul Stone from him. Now, eventually Ultron gets tired of the games that they're playing with the fight, and decides to simply use the power that he has to destroy the entire planet. And it looks like he also destroys the entire universe, as well as the Guardians of the Multiverse are transported to the universe in which only Black Widow is alive. Black Widow was really skeptical of who the Guardians of the Multiverse are, considering the fact that she's the only person alive in her universe. But luckily, her and Peggy Carter in Peggy's universe end up being best friends, so she knows a lot about Natasha, including the name of her father Ivan, and she even drops the name Alexei, who of course is the Red Guardian, whose shield Natasha would end up using later on in the episode. Now, since Ultron is a cosmic entity, he finds them with ease. The Avengers attack him, and Ultron gets pretty pissed off and says, "I can destroy entire galaxies with a thought. Why won't you all die?" He there tries to wipe out this universe like he just did the previous one. However, Doctor Strange absorbs his power and essentially reverses it. And I believe that Strange Supreme could be the villain of Season 2, because he now has Ultron, or at least a part of him, inside of him. Just like he absorbed Shumagorth and some other demons and now has part of them inside inside of him. The same goes for Ultron. He absorbed some of his power, so therefore Ultron must be a part of him now in some way, shape, or form. Now this confuses even Ultron himself that he's able to absorb his power. This helps the Avengers kind of get the upper hand on him until he has enough again and uses the Time Stone to kind of freeze everybody in time. However, Doctor Strange has a Time Stone of his own, so it kind of looks like they canceled each other out because Doctor Strange was outside of the effects. Strange uses the power of Shumagorath and a few of the other demons that he absorbed in his famous episode, and the Avengers pin down Ultron long enough to get the Infinity Crusher on top of him. It absorbs all the stones, in which it then explodes. However, Ultron is not dead, and we then see the camera pan around all of the Guardians of the Multiverse, much like the very famous scene in the very first Avengers film. Of course, Ultron is not dead, and he explains that the Infinity Stones are unique, therefore the Infinity Crusher could not destroy these stones because they are from a different universe. Ultron then realizes that it is Strange protecting everybody and goes for Strange. All hope seems lost until Natasha finds the arrow that has the Zola virus in it. With the help of Peggy Carter, she shoots it right into Ultron's eye, infecting him with the Zola virus. Zola then defeats Ultron, in a scene that is very much like when Ultron defeated Jarvis. However, like I mentioned, Killmonger had been tampering with one of the Ultron bots' head. He manages to hack this, and then he ends up taking the vibranium armor from Ultron and taking the Infinity Stones. However, Zola is still there, and of course he wants the Infinity Stones and the armor back, and the two of them battle it out until eventually Strange Supremes realizes that they weren't supposed to win, they were simply supposed to separate the stones from the body. And since the stones were already separated, Strange turns Killmonger and Zola into stone. We then cut to the Watcher and Strange, and Ultron and Killmonger are now in a pocket dimension, inside of a pocket dimension, because Strange is in a pocket dimension as well. The Watcher asks Steven if he will watch the pocket dimension and states that if it cracks and they escape, it's going to essentially be the same thing, the destruction of the multiverse, in which Steven agrees that he'll watch, and I definitely think that this is the setup for Season 2, in which Strange is probably going to be the villain. He might see those stones as a way to undo the damage that he did, as in the entire destruction of the universe, in Episode 3. He could see the stones as a way to get his universe back and Christine. And as I mentioned before, he definitely has Ultron inside of him, at least a part of him. Now, the Watcher sends everybody back to their respective universes at the exact point in time where they were taken away, much like in Avengers Endgame, where Steve had to return the Infinity Stones to the exact point in time when they were taken. He returns everybody but Natasha. In her universe, she was the only person left alive, literally the only person, so having her in that universe probably won't make any difference at all. So he puts her in the universe from Episode 3, the one where Natasha actually died. When we last left that episode, Loki had pretty much taken control over the world. All of the Avengers were dead except for Steve Rogers, and Captain Marvel was called. So we go to this universe, and Loki with his Asgardian army is fighting Captain Marvel, Nick Fury, Steve Rogers, and now a new Black Widow from a different universe, in which Black Widow quickly makes easy work of Loki. Fury realizes that this is not the same Black Widow, but he's okay with it. Then we go to the post-credit, in which we are back in Peggy Carter's universe. Natasha tells her to kind of brace herself, in which we find the Hydra Stomper that Steve Rogers used in the very first episode, and Natasha tells us that there's somebody inside of it, telling us basically that Steve Rogers is still alive. This is also setting up at least one episode for Season 2. And like I said, I know a lot of people were expecting some type of a tie-in into the MCU, into Multiverse of Madness, in which we did not get. Or did we? Not directly, but if we read in between the lines, we kind of see that some of this is going to bleed over. Recently, there was a leaked photo for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Concept art showed that Ultron bots will indeed be in the film. Also, not to mention, the Illuminati is supposed to be introduced in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as well, and I believe we could have seen the start of that here. Because the Illuminati is essentially the guardians of the multiverse. Now, in the comics, they simply protect the world and their universe. They consist of the leaders of different groups. Iron Man from the Avengers, Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, Professor Xavier from the X-Men, Black Bolt from the Inhumans, Namor the Submariner of Atlantis, and of course, Doctor Strange. But we know Marvel doesn't always do a complete adaptation of the comics. In fact, more often than not, they don't. And the Illuminati are also supposed to guard the Infinity Stones, in which there aren't really any Infinity Stones in our main MCU right now. Which leads me to believe that the Illuminati are going to be introduced so they can protect the multiverse. They are coming in Multiverse of Madness after all, and why would they come and be formed if it didn't have to do with the multiverse? So in the MCU, instead of the Illuminati being protectors of just one universe, I believe they are going to be protectors of all of them. Essentially a Guardians of the Multiverse, but with a full-time job of protecting the multiverse. Now the final thought on this episode and the series as a whole is not to forget what the producers of the show said. They did say that this is canon to the MCU. Now with a multiverse, that means a lot of things can be canon to the MCU, but the biggest thing to focus on here is the Watcher. If the Watcher is canon to the MCU, that means that not only is he the Watcher for these animated universes, but he is actually the Watcher for our live-action universes as well. Meaning that he could show up in live-action form in Multiverse of Madness. And if that is possible, that means that it is also possible for any of these other characters to show up in Multiverse of Madness as well. In fact, it has been rumored that Peggy Carter is going to show up in the movie. That's just a rumor for now, but the basic principle of this, of the multiverse, is that literally anything is possible. Ultron stated that in episode 8, and Marvel even advertised that in their promos for this final episode. They said that anything is possible in the multiverse. So I would definitely expect some remnants of What If to appear in the MCU at some point in time, most likely in Multiverse of Madness. Now I am genuinely curious to hear what you all had to think about What If as a series as a whole. So let me know what you rate the entire series in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of the latest MCU news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.
I remember one of you said to me in one of the comments that Black Widow in certain realities or whatever has had the super soldier serum, a weaker version of Steve Rogers' version, and he said to explain the strength. I'm like, no, still, you don't drop a god just because you got the super soldier serum. That's, no. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is she going to drop kick Loki and drop him? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, no, that doesn't work. So, there's some things that don't work in the episode, but I really liked it. I had a good time watching it. I'm sad that, Widow wasn't brought back to ours, but it is what it is. But thank you very much for catching me up. Cosmic Wonder, make sure y'all get over to Cosmic Wonder and subscribe. Tell them Tyrone Magnus sent you. I learned some stuff that I didn't know, so man, this makes me wait. Like, I'm most excited about the Multiverse of Madness that I can think about right now. That's coming soon. That is the Marvel movie I'm the most excited about. Post down below the Marvel movie you're most excited about. Now it's the Multiverse of Madness after seeing this. 2 million subscribers. Woo!